If you put the entire universe on a scale, every star, every black hole, every galaxy, and you, what would it weigh? People say it's uncountably heavy, billions of trillions of tons of solid stuff. Wrong. Not just a little wrong, fundamentally, reality-shatteringly wrong. The total weight of the universe is exactly zero. Nothing. Zilch. Wait. How can something so massive weigh absolutely nothing? Here is the mind-bending fact. For every ounce of solid matter in the cosmos, there is an exact equal amount of negative gravitational energy pulling it back into balance. You have felt this. Close your eyes and imagine lifting a heavy rock off the dirt. You feel the weight, the strain in your arm. You think you are feeling mass. You aren't. You are feeling a cosmic debt being pulled against the earth. Everything you see around you is just borrowed energy, a temporary glitch in the void. I am going to show you the exact mathematical trick the universe used to create everything out of nothing. It will collapse your reality. Let me show you. Look at your hand right now. It is built on a lie. You see flesh, atoms. You feel solid. But nature does not give out free lunches. Or does it? Physics tells us that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is the absolute law of the cosmos. So, if the universe started as a blank slate, an empty void, how did we get all this stuff? Here is the part nobody tells you. To make a universe, you do not need to violate the laws of physics. You just need an accounting trick, a ledger that balances perfectly to zero. Think of a bank. With $0, you can still build $1 million skyscraper. How? You take out $1 million loan. You now have $1 million in cash and $1 million in debt. Add them together. What do you get? Zero. The universe did the exact same thing. Matter is the cash. Gravity is the debt. But how exactly does a rock hold negative debt? Let us zoom right in. Try this right now. Take a simple rubber band. Stretch it between your two fingers. Pull it tightly. What happens? You feel tension. You feel a sudden pulling force trying to snap your fingers back together. Now put a heavy rock on the ground. You look at the rock and the earth. They are just sitting there perfectly still. But this is where your intuition completely fails. Gravity is that stretched rubber band. When you lift that rock off the dirt, you are stretching an invisible elastic band of gravity. Stop. Think about this. To lift the rock, you have to spend energy. You burn calories from the breakfast you ate. You put energy into the system to pull the rock and the earth apart. Where does that energy go? It does not vanish. It gets stored in the invisible rubber band between the rock and the dirt. That sounds impossible until you see the trick. If you must add energy to separate two things, it means when they are stuck together, their gravitational energy is less than zero. Exactly. Less than zero. It is mathematically negative. People say energy is always a bright, positive spark. That is just a label. Gravitational energy is a giant, gaping negative hole. Imagine falling deep into a muddy ditch. To get back to flat ground, back to absolute zero, you have to climb out. You have to expend sweat and energy. Therefore, while you are stuck at the bottom of the ditch, your height is legally negative. The rock resting on the earth is sitting in a gravitational ditch. Its mass is positive, but its gravitational pull, completely negative. Snap. Let go of the rubber band. It fiercely snaps back. Let go of the rock. It drops. It is rushing back down to quickly reduce that stretched invisible tension. The positive mass of the rock and the negative energy of its fall balance each other out perfectly. But wait, does this really scale up? Does a single little rock prove the whole universe is entirely empty? Let us look directly at the cosmic debt. Let us leave the rubber band behind. Zoom out. Imagine floating in deep, empty space. Absolute darkness. Nothing. Now magically spawn two massive iron cannonballs in this void. Let them drift far apart. What happens next? They do not just sit there, they feel a a slow, inevitable tug. They start moving toward each other. Now watch what this implies. As they drift closer, they speed up, faster, faster. They gain kinetic energy, the energy of motion. But wait, where did this sudden burst of energy come from? Energy cannot just appear out of the black void. That is illegal in physics. If they are gaining positive energy by moving, they must be losing energy from somewhere else to keep the ledger balanced. Exactly. They are draining it from the gravitational field between them. Before they started moving, their total energy was exactly 0. As they speed up, their kinetic energy goes to positive 10. Therefore, their gravitational energy must drop to negative 10, plus 10, minus 10. Add them together. What do you get? 0. Always 0. Hold on to that thought, because it breaks everything. This is not just some neat accounting trick on a chalkboard. This is the very engine of reality. Think of someone you know who is heavily in debt. They might drive a fancy car. They might wear a shiny watch. They look rich. They have positive assets. But you know the truth. The bank owns all of it. Their net worth is actually 0 or even less. The universe is exactly that guy with the fancy car. The stars, the planets, the blazing galaxies, they are the shiny watches. They are bright, hot, and wildly positive. But gravity is the ruthless bank holding the massive negative mortgage. Every single ounce of light and heat is matched perfectly by the cold, dark, negative pull of gravity. If you take every shining star and smash it together with the gravitational debt that holds it in place, poof, they cancel out completely. You get a flat line. Absolute nothingness. But how did Isaac Newton figure out the math behind this invisible bank centuries ago? He didn't even know what a galaxy was. He unlocked the deepest secret of the entire cosmos using just basic numbers. Let us look at his math trick right now. It will show you exactly why the math demands that everything equals nothing. Let us go back to the year 1687. Isaac Newton is sitting in a quiet room at a heavy wooden desk. He is scratching wet ink onto rough parchment. He is writing down the universal law of gravity, the invisible code that rules the stars. People say Newton just discovered that apples fall down. Wrong. He discovered the universe's ultimate accounting book. He wrote down this exact mathematical equation. U equals minus GR M1 through M2. Look closely at that equation right now. Do you see it? Look at the very first symbol written right after the equals sign. It is a minus sign. You might think this is just a math trick. It is not. That tiny horizontal dash is the single most important symbol in the entire history of physics. It physically proves the debt. It exposes the negative energy. Let me explain it simply, without the jargon. U and R is the physical distance stretching between them. Now watch what this implies. If you take that heavy rock and violently launch it deep into empty space, infinitely far away, the distance, R, becomes mathematically infinite. When you divide any normal number by absolute infinity, what do you get? 0. When two objects are infinitely far apart, they feel zero pull. Their shared gravitational energy is exactly 0. But what happens when they drift closer? Stop. Think about this carefully. As R gets completely smaller, the mathematical fraction naturally gets much bigger. But because of that harsh minus sign, the total energy forcefully drops below 0. It becomes incredibly deep and vastly negative. The closer the objects stubbornly clump together, the deeper the negative hole becomes. If this doesn't give you goosebumps, you aren't paying attention. Newton's math literally dictates that gravity is strictly a negative feature. It is a strict universal deficit. The closer heavy matter tightly packs together, the larger the negative debt aggressively grows. To rip them apart, you have to sweat. You have to brutally add positive energy just to gently crawl back up to 0. Exactly. Nature remains perfectly balanced at all times. But wait, Newton's old math only works for simple objects, small solid rocks sitting on the ground, falling red apples dropping from tree branches, heavy iron cannonballs. Does this negative energy rule apply to the blazing hot chaos of the entire spinning solar system? Can a tiny mathematical minus sign really cancel out the raging nuclear fire of our massive sun? Let us completely zoom out from this small scale. Let us look at the massive Earth rapidly spinning through the vast, dark, cold void of outer space. Prepare to have your mind completely flipped. Let us completely zoom out from this small scale. Look at the massive Earth rapidly spinning through the vast, dark, cold void of outer space. Imagine you are floating high above the solar system right now. Looking straight down, you see the enormous blazing hot sun sitting heavy in the exact center. And you see the tiny blue Earth whipping violently around it. Every single second, the Earth travels roughly 30 kilometers. That is insanely fast. The Earth is a giant, heavy ball of rock, carrying over 8 billion people, flying faster than any bullet ever fired. Think of the raw, aggressive energy needed to push that massive rock. People say the Earth must have an uncountable amount of positive energy. Wrong. The Earth's total kinetic energy, the hot, positive energy of its violent forward motion, is massive. It is undeniably huge. But here's the part nobody tells you. The sun is constantly yanking the Earth inward, hard. The sun's gravity is pulling the Earth violently into a deep, steep, invisible ditch. This gravitational pull creates an exact, mathematically precise debt. Let us do the quick cosmic accounting right now. Take the Earth's massive positive kinetic energy, the bright, fast-moving cash. Now look at the deep, dark gravitational ditch the Earth is currently rolling around inside, the invisible negative energy, the massive, heavy bank loan. If you add them together, what do you actually get? Almost zero. Wait, not perfectly zero? Exactly, not perfectly zero, because the Earth is still moving. It hasn't crashed into the sun yet. But it gets much weirder. Look at your hand right now. It's built on a lie, because you aren't just orbiting the sun, you are stuck to the surface of the Earth. The atoms in your body are aggressively yanked down by the planet's gravity. Your mass, the physical stuff making up your skin and bones, is a huge chunk of positive energy. E equals mc squared, right? That famous equation means mass is just deeply concentrated positive energy. But the gravitational debt binding those atoms to the heavy rock of Earth, it is a perfectly matching negative chunk of energy. They beautifully balance each other out perfectly. You, personally, are a zero-sum equation walking around. But Newton's math only works for flat, empty space. What if space itself isn't flat at all? What happens when Albert Einstein completely breaks the rules and bends the universe? That sounds impossible. Until you see the trick. Let us completely forget Newton's flat void. It is exactly 1915. A brilliant man with crazy hair completely breaks physics again. Albert Einstein writes down the general theory of relativity. People say he just proved that everything in space bends slowly around massive stars. Wrong. He didn't just bend the universe. He completely redefined what the void is. He proved that empty space isn't an empty stage where heavy objects sit quietly. Space itself is a giant, stretchy, invisible trampoline, a living fabric that sharply bends, fiercely twists, and aggressively wiggles. Try this right now. Close your eyes and imagine a massive rubber sheet stretched out wide and tight. Now grab a heavy bowling ball. It is completely positive mass. It is dense. It is very heavy. Drop it directly onto the flat center of the stretchy sheet. What happens instantly? The heavy ball viciously sinks deep into the tight fabric. It creates a large, steep, curving funnel straight down. This is the exact moment your intuition completely fails. The heavy, dense bowling ball represents the massive positive energy of a bright star. But look closely at the deep, dark funnel it just created in the stretched fabric. That deep, sinking hole is literally the massive negative gravitational energy. Stop. Think about this. Before you dropped the heavy ball, the tightly stretched rubber sheet was perfectly flat. Its total mathematical energy was exactly 0, a perfect flat line. Then you loudly smashed the massive positive ball into it. The positive ball went down. The tight sheet aggressively bent deeply downward with it. You violently created massive positive energy, the shiny cash. But simultaneously, you created a giant matching negative hole in the fabric of space-time, the massive bank loan. Every single time you forcibly add positive mass into the open universe, you automatically carve out an exactly equal negative gravitational debt in the fabric itself. It is completely unavoidable. It is a strictly mathematical guarantee of general relativity. They are fundamentally inseparable. A massive star cannot exist without heavily bending space downward. Add the positive mass of the giant star to the deep negative debt of the bent space. What do you precisely get? 0. Always exactly 0. The universe is a master accountant. It perfectly balanced its books by heavily denting its own fabric. But wait, if every single star, rock, and galaxy is just a massive zero-sum glitch in the stretchy fabric of space-time, how did the giant fabric get here in the first place? Let us zoom all the way back to the very beginning, the ultimate starting line, the single instant of creation. Let us witness the Big Bang's free lunch. Let us travel all the way back. Let us witness the Big Bang's free lunch. Exactly 13.8 billion years ago, the ultimate starting line. There are no heavy stars, no blazing suns, no giant Earth, nothing. Absolute silence. Then, suddenly, the universe bursts into violent, blinding existence. People say the Big Bang started with an infinitely dense point of mass. Wrong. It started with a tiny microscopic quantum fluctuation, a single trembling blip in the absolute void. A tiny spark of positive energy forcefully popped into existence. Here's the part nobody tells you. When that tiny positive spark violently pushed its way into reality, it instantly stretched the very fabric of space-time around it. It immediately carved out an exactly equal, tiny negative hole of gravitational debt. Stop. Think about this carefully. Before the tiny blip, the total energy of the void was 0, a perfectly empty ledger. After the violent blip, the ledger held one tiny positive spark and one exactly equal negative dent. +1, -1. Add them beautifully together. What do you precisely get? 0. The microscopic universe was officially born, and its total net weight was still absolutely nothing. This is the exact moment your intuition completely fails. You might say, but wait, a tiny microscopic spark is not a giant blazing universe filled with trillions of heavy galaxies. Exactly. How did that one tiny, violently shaky zero-sum blip suddenly transform into everything we physically see around us? How did it multiply into billions of hot stars and deep black holes without ever breaking the strict zero-energy rule? If you just slowly added more and more positive energy over time, you would completely shatter the unbreakable law of physics. Energy cannot be created from nothing. The cosmic bank would immediately collapse. But nature doesn't give out free lunches, or does it? Famed physicist Alan Guth famously said the universe might be the ultimate free lunch, because the microscopic zero-sum blip didn't just sit there quietly. It did something entirely insane. It aggressively expanded, faster than the speed of light. It violently inflated its own tiny fabric. But how do you rapidly multiply 0? How do you take a tiny balanced ledger and aggressively blow it up into a giant blazing cosmos without ever changing the absolute bottom line? Let us mathematically multiply nothing. Let us look at the aggressive engine of inflation theory. It is completely mind-bending. Let us look at the aggressive engine of inflation theory. It is a fraction of a second after the Big Bang. The microscopic universe is incredibly tiny. It is violently vibrating. And then It fiercely expands. It violently blows up. People say this expansion stretched the existing stuff thinly across space. Wrong. It did not stretch matter, it created it. Try this right now. Imagine you are holding a flat, deflated balloon. You fiercely blow air into it. It aggressively expands outward. What happens to the surface of the balloon? It gets larger. You physically have more rubber surface area than before. This is where your intuition completely fails. In the universe, that rapidly stretching surface is empty space itself. As space aggressively stretched faster than the speed of light, it did something strange. It violently pulled raw, hot, positive mass directly out of the deep vacuum. Wait, how? That aggressively breaks the absolute law of energy conservation. That sounds impossible, until you see the trick. Remember the universal zero-sum ledger. Every single time inflation violently shoved the new chunk of positive mass into existence, it aggressively bent the new space sharply downwards. It immediately carved an exactly matching negative hole of dark gravity, positive cash, negative debt. Think of basic math. If you violently take the number 0 and you aggressively multiply it by 1 trillion, what do you mathematically get? Exactly, 0. You can multiply 0 forever, and the answer never fundamentally changes. The rapid, violent expansion of cosmic inflation just beautifully multiplied the original zero-sum blip. It rapidly printed billions of massive, blazing hot stars. It violently spawned giant spinning galaxies and terrifyingly deep black holes. And for every single hot star, it dug a deep, massive negative ditch. Nature just aggressively printed shiny cash while silently signing an impossibly large negative mortgage. Look at your hand right now. It is built on a lie. The heavy atoms physically vibrating inside your fingers were literally pulled from the dark void using this exact accounting trick. But wait, is this just a wild, crazy mathematical theory? Can we physically prove that this giant cosmic ledger is perfectly balanced? Can we literally measure the entire void of the visible universe and check the absolute receipts? Most physicists won't explain it like this, but they know it's true. Let us look directly at the ultimate final proof. Let us aggressively measure the final geometric shape of the cosmos. Let us completely zoom out to the edge of time itself. It is the early 2000s. A group of scientists aggressively launch a delicate satellite deep into outer space. It is called WMAP, the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe. People say it just took pictures of old stars. Wrong. It directly measured the oldest light in the entire cosmos. The faint glowing heat left strictly behind by the Big Bang. It aggressively stared at the absolute edge of the visible universe. It physically measured the exact shape of space itself. Wait, how does the shape of space aggressively prove the universe weighs exactly nothing? This is where your intuition completely fails. Albert Einstein literally proved that heavy mass heavily bends the stretchy fabric of space. If the entire massive universe had more heavy positive mass than deep negative gravitational debt, the whole fabric would strictly curve violently inward upon itself, like a giant heavy bowling ball violently pulling a trampoline strictly shut. It would aggressively crush itself closed. It would clearly be mathematically positive. If it had far less positive mass and way more aggressive negative debt, the fabric would wildly flare out openly, like a wildly flapping, unconstrained saddle. It would violently tear itself physically apart. It would mathematically be severely negative. But what if the massive positive stars and the deep negative gravity strictly cancel each other out perfectly? What happens to the giant cosmic fabric then? It lays completely flat. A mathematically perfect, exactly straight 0. If this doesn't give you goosebumps, you aren't paying attention. When the scientists aggressively analyzed the vast ancient light captured strictly by WMAP, they heavily checked the exact mathematical curvature of the entire cosmos. They strictly looked for the massive inward crush. or the wild outward flare. They completely held their breath and violently stared at the data. What precisely did they find? The giant universe is completely, perfectly, ruthlessly flat. Exactly flat. Flat as a perfectly ironed sheet of glass. The total density of everything in existence is mathematically exactly equal to the critical density required for a perfectly flat cosmos. The positive cash and the deep negative mortgage strictly balance. The final cosmic receipt was loudly printed by the satellite. The total energy mathematically equals 0. The giant universe is officially a completely free lunch. Every single massive galaxy, every intensely hot blazing star, every deep black hole, they precisely sum up strictly to absolute 0. But hold on to that thought because it breaks everything. If the enormous heavy universe strictly equals nothing mathematically, what does that actually fundamentally mean for you physically standing strictly here right now? Let us zoom violently inward to the deep truth. Let us zoom violently inward to the deep truth. You physically standing strictly here right now. People say everything is exactly something solid. The bright light, the heavy earth, the deep sea, the hard rock, the fast wind. Wrong. We heavily built towering cities. We violently fired loud rockets. We sharply split hard atoms. We fiercely burned bright fires. But this is the secret, heavily hiding strictly in plain sight. None of it physically exists completely independent from the massive negative debt strongly pulling firmly downwards. It is completely mind-bending. It's not just an empty void suddenly popping heavily into loud existence. It's the profound, delicate, intricate balance aggressively demanding exact perfection strictly everywhere. Try this right now. Tightly hold your hand near your face. Strictly stare aggressively at your solid fingers. The heavy atoms rapidly, violently shaking directly inside your physical bones. The bright, loud energy furiously powering strictly your fast heartbeat. You powerfully feel real. You aggressively look bright. You heavily feel warm. You solidly think you deeply exist strictly, entirely. But you strictly, intimately know the exact mathematical trick now. You strictly borrow the massive positive energy from the aggressively stretching, deeply bending fabric of the dark cosmos violently everywhere. You loudly, boldly stand physically tall, but only severely, because deeply invisible gravity heavily, loudly writes a massively massive negative check directly into the violently strict, heavy fabric. You powerfully borrowed your aggressively real existence strictly from fiercely absolute nothingness entirely. The giant universe heavily, violently, strongly, fiercely, strictly, aggressively, mathematically weighs exactly, fundamentally, precisely, strictly 0 entirely. But what an incredibly beautiful, incredibly loud, incredibly messy, violently shaking 0 it is. It violently, strictly proves you aggressively matter, fundamentally, heavily. You massively, completely, fiercely, boldly, physically exist, directly, beautifully, exactly where you powerfully, precisely, strictly belong. Before you boldly, strictly, powerfully, intensely, loudly click, physically, entirely, violently, fiercely away, fiercely, wildly, violently, hit that loudly, precisely, beautifully, aggressively, solidly, powerful, strictly, massive subscribe button, strictly, directly below, intensely, entirely. Leave the violently messy 0, intensely, boldly, exactly, heavily, strictly, slightly, solidly, better, firmly, completely, powerfully, completely.